You're listening to the Effective Statistician podcast. Reach your potential, lead great science, and serve patients. Today's episode is episode number 63. Questions to ask yourself before starting a new project. Welcome to the Effective Statistician with Alexander Schacht and Benjamin Pieske, the weekly podcast for statisticians in the health sector who want to reach their potential to serve patients without becoming overwhelmed by work. If you haven't already done so, connect with me on LinkedIn. Just find Alexander Schacht and connect with me. It would be awesome to share common interest, and I'm regularly sharing all kinds of interesting updates there as well. Today's episode is about lots of different activities that we are not usually working on. Well, of course, most of our day-to-day activities are clinical trials, studies, submissions, all these kind of things. There's lots of other activities that we get involved in, process improvement initiatives, initiatives to drive forward innovation, all kind of different stuff that we work on. And today it's specifically about these type of projects. So today we are giving you advice on how to best pick the right projects for you, because usually you have a say in that. This podcast is created in association with PSI, a global membership organization dedicated to leading and promoting best practice and industry initiatives. Join PSI today to further develop your statistical capabilities with access to special interest groups, the video-on-demand content library, free registration to all PSI webinars, and much, much more. The reduced rate is just £20 for non-high-income countries and only £95 for high-income countries. Just visit the PSI website at psiweb.org to learn more about PSI activities and become a PSI member today. Welcome to another episode of The Effective Statistician. This time it's again Benjamin and myself. Hi Benjamin, how are you doing?
Hi Alexander. Well, very well, thanks.
Thanks so much. It's an interesting topic that we have today, and it's about questions to ask yourself before starting a new project. And when thinking about this, it's not these kind of, let's say, usual projects that we are involved in, the clinical study you're asked to work on, or the real-world evidence projects that you're supposed to support. Not these type of projects. It's more about these projects that are, so to say, side projects. So let's say a process improvement project that starts and that you could volunteer for, or that your supervisor may ask you for whether you have time to work on it. Or maybe you're thinking about a methodological project where you see some need to improve a certain method or further develop a certain method, and you would like to work on that, and you may need support from the supervisor on this. So it's really about these kind of, so to say, on top projects.
Yeah, other, like we would usually call these initiatives, maybe, so things where you can reviews, if it's about process improvement, so SOP reviews, or for guidelines or implementation initiatives. So there are different names for it. So basically it is everything that somehow overlaps with your job or with your job as a statistician, but is not the core study, the clinical studies, the type of studies that you are usually working on.
Yeah. So, and for lots of these projects, you may often have the freedom to, get involved, or you might need to ask, if you're asked by your supervisor, you may be able to negotiate whether you're really involved, or whether there's another initiative that would better fit with your goals and things like that. And so today we are going through quite a long list of questions that you can use to see whether that's the right project for you. And I think there's a lot of projects that I see people starting on that never make it to the finish line. And I think that is very often that one of these questions was not asked at the beginning. And then people struggle to finish these kind of projects.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's well, I mean, sometimes it's also that it's not that the question not being asked, it's maybe that things change. So it's not necessarily just about the questions, but they at least help you for the decision to either take the step or not. And actually going through the list, it doesn't seem that you need to answer all the questions with yes or anything. I think there may be some ups and downs in terms of advantages of doing it still if you're not able to answer all the questions with a straight yes. So that's why it's kind of still a support only to support you with a decision, if you have a decision. But if you, I mean, in some cases, that's why, in some cases, it's also difficult to really decide, because if you're asked, there might be situations where, no,
you can't say no.
No, it's not the right answer. So that's something you need to find out before that anyway. But yeah, that's the question. But okay, so let's start with the question. So what is the first question, Alexander? What do you think is the core questions that you should ask for the beginning?
So one of the core questions at the beginning is really, does it help the business? So if you're working on a project and or you want to start an initiative, maybe a methodological initiative, I think it's really core to see how does it help the business at hand, and not kind of thinking, well, it will help the industry long term in 30 years or something like this. But can you explain to your management and upper management why the business will benefit from that in the next years?
Exactly. So, this is important, because otherwise you don't get support. I mean, your supervisor may support it, or your colleagues may support it because they think it's a good idea. But actually, if it doesn't help the business, the support is very limited in the medium or long term, if it's obvious that it doesn't really help the business.
Yeah, and also kind of, you may have now some free time, and maybe people won't see it as critical, but usually when work pressure comes up, these kind of other things that first fall off the plate, and you yourself will have difficulty to prioritize it. So that's the first thing, to really go into yourself and explore whether you can confidently defend that it helps the business.
And but first, from my experience, I would say that usually if the initiative gets onto your desk, it helps the business, because otherwise it wouldn't have been initiated. So it's most cases it's quite obvious, but still that is the core question to get support in the long run.
Yeah. The next question, or the next kind of set of questions, is really, am I the right person to work on this? Or is there, a much better person suited somewhere around that also has capacity and these kind of things? And that is, well, I think it's a question that you need to have a little bit of thought about it. But, there's lots of pros and cons around that. And I think, a couple of the next questions will help you with it. But it's also, if you're a supervisor, you can think about, is it me that need to work on that? Or is it maybe better that someone in my team works on that?
That's true. And the question really is, the right person is not necessarily, do I have time for it? Because the capacities that you have may change over time. So this is something that is, maybe it's a question for the beginning, or if you already foresee the workload that is needed during the next months or years, or how long this is going on. However, I think it's really about the skills and about you as a person, if you're the right person to work on this.
Yeah. And I think especially kind of the delegation topic is relevant. Okay. Next question is, and that's related to am I the right person about it, is am I excited about it? And I think this is a question that is far too often not asked, because I think if there is good passion, then that helps to overcome lots of blocks that any project will get into at some point, sooner or later.
Absolutely. I think this is one of my history lessons learned, that this question wasn't really asked by myself about a project, because it might be interesting and like just from thinking and from theory you understand it's a good thing, might be beneficial for your department whatsoever, but if you're not excited, you don't have the drive to keep this alive, for especially when it gets to setting priorities on the long run, with competing tasks or other challenges that you have at some point.
Yeah, it becomes kind of, over time, it becomes really a burden then. If you're not excited, then, of course, for any project, there will be times where, some things are not that much fun. But if you're not really excited about the overall goal and why this project runs, it's really, really difficult. Okay, next question.
Which links back a little bit to if you're the right person.
Yeah. Is, do I have the right skills? And I would kind of like to combine that with another question, or what would it take to get the right expertise? So, and can I tap into that? So I think it's sometimes quite nice not to know everything, but at least have a idea where to get all the additional knowledge. Yeah, is there someone in the organization that has the knowledge that could help me? Do I know a book that I could easily read, or is there some other kind of sources out there? I'm pretty sure I tapped into lots of projects where I, at the beginning, thought, I'm not really sure whether I have the right skills, but at least I know who to ask.
Yep. Excellent point. I mean, if you're, if you don't speak Hungarian and you're asked to translate something in Hungarian, then you're probably not the right person to take it. You don't have the lack of skills, even though you have somebody to work on, who knows Hungarian, then that might be the right person to do. So, I mean, this is really the key. If it's, if you don't have the skill set for whatever it is, probably a lot of methodological background, for example, then it might not be the right project or initiative to take on.
Yeah. The next question actually goes back to something that we talked about earlier in the year in one of the episodes, and that is about goal setting. And I think it's really important to see how this project aligns with my goals that I have set for the year. It should, maybe it doesn't match 100%, but it should go in the right direction. Yeah. So let's say you have set your goals to get more knowledge around, let's say, supervisory skills. Then maybe a methodological project where you always work by yourself and you don't work really with lots of other people, doesn't really help you with that goal. Yeah. So, or the other way around. Yeah. If it's the same thing. So I think thinking about your long-term goals helps you to determine, is that the right project for me? Yes or no?
Yeah, exactly. I think this is something where it might be thrilling or interesting to do, but again, it's if you have a long-term goal, the excitement might just disappear after a while because you see it's dragging you away from your overall goals.
Yeah.
I mean, it could potentially be that your goals are wrong, but I mean, in general, I think it's really, if you have your goals set and you're drifting apart, then that brings you into a situation where you don't want to be. And don't take the risk, even though it might be an interesting project, to take a part of your capacities into a project which might be interesting but doesn't align. So I would not recommend moving in two ways, basically, with a goal on one side and an initiative on another side.
And here's also a really, really nice area where you can negotiate with your supervisor. Let's say your supervisor comes up and say, oh, it would be great if you could work on this new initiative. And you say, well, we have agreed on these and these development goals for myself. Can you help me understand how it fits into these development goals?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good
and very often, the supervisor may have other options where he can, resource a project and then say, well, maybe someone else is better equipped.
Or different understanding of your goals. Could also be that this is a misunderstanding or misinterpretation of the goals.
Yeah. So that's also another good thing.
That, by the way, just reminds me of reminding everyone that talking to your supervisor might sometimes be very helpful.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. And for all the supervisors, it really helps to speak to your team. Okay, so the next question, I think, is a pretty obvious one.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, it's about, do I have the resources, or can I organize things to accommodate the resources? So basically, do you have the capacities, or can delegate or work together with your supervisor, your team, whatsoever, and to free up the resources and really make things happen? If it's on top of your usual workload, it will be a burden, whether it's interesting or not, but it will be a burden if it's on top of everything else and you actually don't have the resource or the capacities.
Yeah. And there, for me, usually is things like around programming. Programming takes for me a really, really long time. And so if I have any kind of project that involves lots of programming or simulation study or these kind of things, I usually need someone that helps me with that. And, can I find that person? Is there someone that would be willing to help with these kind of things? So that is also kind of goes back to the expertise. You could see also kind of expertise as a resource. Can you work together with someone that has complementary expertise compared to you, so that overall that moves forward? Or of course it could be, that you need some money as well. Yeah, so that you need to buy a license or whatsoever, or you want to present at a conference and you need money for travel or things like that. Yeah, so have a little bit of a thought about all these different resources.
Yeah, that actually brings us to the next two questions about, what do I need budget for this, to really understand what from not human resource wise resources you would need. Could be budget, could be like a different computer, whatsoever. So it could be anything that's related to money. And on the other hand, it's also what other people do need to help me. So these two questions are actually almost covered with your answer already.
Yeah.
So it's really it's not you alone. I mean, it's an initiative. Sometimes you give input to a group of or to something where people ask you for your input or to support. But really, if you drive something, some other project, if you work on that, then you usually can't do this yourself, and you need other people, and you need the support, and you need the support of their supervisors to free up the people to get the capacities to really work with them. So this is the question you need to ask, and actually you need to have the answer, not only what other people need to help me, but are they able to help me as well? So it's not you alone.
Yeah. And in terms of other people helping me, one of these other people, of course, and that's the next question, is your supervisor. So will your supervisor help you with this? Will he be supportive of you working on this? And that's a little bit of a tricky question in that regard, that if you have a supervisor that is, let's say, not that risk averse and really wants to make sure that the project succeeds and that, everything, that you're not kind of working on something that never ends, then it's really sometimes difficult to get direct buy-in from the supervisor. And in these kind of settings, it's sometimes helpful to ask another question. And that question is it worth taking the risk to move it forward as, so to say, a submarine project? Yeah. So something that maybe you just for yourself or just with one colleague you work on for some time to get it at least in a state where you have something, some kind of prototype or some kind of pilot that, that is proof of concept that shows that, overall that will work. Yeah. Of course, the risk depends also on the time and resources that you need to work on it. But if you think, well, maybe it takes me 8 hours or 10 hours to get to that stage, well, maybe it's something worth considering.
Yeah, maybe one step back for the supervisor. There are also situations, might not be your supervisor, but somebody else who actually received the request for supporting this initiative or this project themselves and decided to not do it and just pass it on to somebody else. So if that is the situation, you may be quite certain that the interest in this project may not be as it would be if it's a thrilling project that is made up and will make your supervisor shine. So it's really it's a difficult question in general with a supervisor, but I think it is one of the key questions to success. And then if your supervisor supports you or not. Not support in terms of, if you ask him 3 times, then he finally gives an answer. Support in, if he's excited about this one as well and understands that this is important and this will support you without any, let's say, pressure or any low,
low risk.
Low risk, exactly. Low risk, something, So it's really kind of it's a key question to the success of your project.
Yeah, yeah, and of course we are assuming here that you get along quite well with your supervisor overall, and you really work together as a team. Next question is also a little bit related to this submarine kind of topic. And that is, are there any early validation steps that I can take? So, and that is, especially with projects that maybe run longer or where, you need more resources or things like that. It's really helpful to build in some kind of milestones where you check for feasibility, where you check, well, is it still worth spending the time and things like that. And these kind of validation steps can also mean that, you maybe come up with a presentation of how the solution would look like, and you share it with business partners, which you would work together with these, or which would need to kind of agree to the solution in the end, or something like this.
So make it a sequential design.
Yeah, so to say.
An unblinding interim. No, seriously, I think if it's really a wide field or uncertainties in there, just plan or make it quite clear that give it 2 months and then come together with your supervisor or whoever is the owner or the sometimes from senior management, like an executive sponsor or whatever this is then called, who is the owner of this initiative, and then give the feedback and allow for a better planning at that stage. Also with the if you realize it's not feasible, or if you realize you don't get the support or whatever, these are built in a step in between where you can check with everyone who's involved, every stakeholder of this, to plan the next steps or to just present where you are and what the next steps or what support is needed.
Yeah. And I think this is anyway a good, let's say, some questions to ask yourself before you start the projects. What are kind of the initial steps? Can you come up with some kind of project plan? And if you see a project as a very big project, it's also sometimes maybe frightening to move it forward. And also, it's very easy to procrastinate on these kind of things. So sometimes it's really good to kind of break it down into smaller actionable steps and see whether you can accomplish these and what's really the first steps that you need to take. So we now discussed through quite a long list of questions, and all of these questions, I think in the end, for me, really sum up to one question. If you take all of that into account and have reviewed that, are you coming to yes, this is a hell yes for the project? Or is it something like, maybe. And if it's not, yes, really a good project, then better not do it. Because I think there's a lot of fear of missing out on these kind of things. And in my history, these projects come on a pretty regular basis, and there's pretty lots of opportunities, and there's, lots of ideas that are floating around. But picking the right ones and working on the right ones means saying no to a lot of these projects and opportunities. And I know that I far too often have said yes to these kind of things in the past.
Yeah, life is tough enough. I mean, why should we? I mean, if we have the chance, again, it's not that you're being asked all the time whether choose a project, and you have a list of projects where you can choose from. So that's kind of an ideal world. But in reality, still, if you have the choice and if you get to the questions, and we said before, am I excited about it? So if you're excited about it, and then go through all the questions with the where you use your brain and try to get away from any excitement and any feelings. I mean, if it's about the budget, the support, so the timelines and the organization around it. So if you get to all this and you are excited about it, and then it's a yes, it's a full yes, that's the right project. So I think that works.
Yeah. So with that, we are at the end of our short episode today. Actually, it's not that short. It's actually quite in our target zone of 20 to 30 minutes this time. So thanks so much to listening, and talk to you next week.
Okay, bye.
This show was created in association with PSI. Thanks for listening. Please visit theeffectivestatistician.com to find the show notes and learn more about our podcast to boost your career as a statistician. Reach your potential, lead great science, and serve patients. Just be an effective statistician.